Welcome to Chat with Nomads, where we uncover travel insights, business advice, adventure stories, and lifestyle tips with world travelers and digital nomads. Here is your host, Rax, from nomadsunveiled.com.
Hi guys, welcome to another episode of Chat with Nomads. I'm super excited today because we have Lavdi from KosovoGirlTravels. Hi Lavdi, welcome to the show.
Hi, Rex. Thanks for having me here.
Hey, I'm just very excited to speak to a traveler from Kosovo because I have not, despite traveling quite a lot, I don't think I've met a traveler from Kosovo before. So why don't you tell us a bit about yourself and your background?
Initially, let me say that you're not the first person who has not met a traveler from Kosovo because it's not easy to travel from Kosovo. I started my blog about 4 years ago in 2017. I love traveling, and I like starting the travel blog was more of a necessity for like putting out information about Kosovo out there because there isn't much online about Kosovo, and also whatever there is or a lot of information there is actually misinformation or misguiding to what traveling to Kosovo means and what is there to see and do. So it's not my full-time job. I have a full-time job. My blogging is just more of a hobby. And yes, it's been 4 years. I kept traveling. I haven't put much in my travel blog, especially during this COVID times. I've seen so many people being so productive during COVID times, and I haven't. It's like, because for me, I kept working. I didn't have to work from home. I kept working from my office. But yeah, I didn't keep traveling. I only did the necessary travel to come back home and visit my family and friends.
So I noticed you have an affinity with young countries because obviously you are from Kosovo, which is the second youngest country in the world. And then you're actually working in South Sudan, which is the youngest country in the world. So tell us more about your actual full-time work, because I understand you're doing something with the UN. So I think it's very interesting.
Yeah, it's it was a funny thing to move from the second newest country in the world to the first to the newest. Well, it kind of happened unexpectedly. I was having a job here. I was actually like freelancing in Kosovo for a local NGO dealing with gender studies, mainly with them. And then I got this job offer with the UN mission in South Sudan. And to be honest, I didn't know much about South Sudan. I knew that they have the lead now in the newest country. So it's not my country anymore, but it's South Sudan. But I didn't know much about the country itself. So I tried to find out about mainly how is it to live there, because that was my concern. And it was not that easy. There isn't much about South Sudan out there either, like in terms of what do you need there, what are the conditions and all. However, I decided to take the opportunity and to go there because anyway, I was planning to travel to Africa, to like the countries I can travel to because I have a Kosovo passport only, so that limits me from traveling. So I had planned, and I had not a plan. I had more like an idea to travel to some of the African countries I could by the end of the year. So this job offer kind of coincided with my plan of traveling to the continent of Africa. It took a long time because my first email with a job offer happened in February. And then I had an interview in March. And then by June, I only got to know that I have been accepted. And then I could only move there in November. So it was like the whole 2018 was more like, okay, well, what is happening next? So what is going to be the next step? It was my first UN experience and I didn't know anybody. So I couldn't even get the information on what happens next. I always had to address my contact person in Bonn and asking like, okay, what is the next step? Because, during that time, I was also looking for other job offers. So I wanted to know what is happening. So I didn't want to get another full-time job and then a month later say that, okay, I'm going now, because it's not professional. So, but anyway, I decided to move there. I didn't find much information out there. I remember when I was checking for Instagram posts about Yambio duty station where I work, there were less than 300 and all of them were kind of repeated, kind of the same, like just reposted from different accounts. And they were not informative. So actually, I didn't get to know much from that itself. Yep. However, I decided to take the job and go. I am there serving as a UN volunteer, so I'm not a UN staff. which then brings me to the thing that I do not have a laissez-passer, UN laissez-passer passport, or UN passport as they call it, which would have solved my issues with traveling. But yeah, as a UNV, as a UN volunteer, we are not entitled to the UN passport. Let's call it like that. So yeah, my job is in the administration because I have a master's in public administration. So I'm working in my field. It is interesting. It is challenging because Yambio is a small village. Let's call it the real name. It's called Yambio town, but it's actually a village. It has its good sides because I was actually discussing earlier with my mom. It has like so many fresh fruits and vegetables. They are bio. They don't put any chemicals in them. So it's like just fresh from the branch or fresh from Mother Earth, if I can say so. So it has its good side. The downsides are that there aren't many places where we can go out, being a village, and also we do lack those like nice, like westernized restaurants where you can go and sit and have a nice meal and proper service from my perspective. So of course, because I think the way how we judge something depends on our background. So sometimes we tend to be maybe insensitive and forget about the country where we're living. We kind of go with our background information and our expectations. And at times I find myself like kind of being that westernized person that expects things to happen differently. And then I have to stop myself and say, okay, this is another country.
Yep.
And there are things that happen here differently. So just wait, relax. So yeah, it has its pros and cons. So.
Do you stay there like in every 6 weeks interval, or because it does sound like the place does not have like a lot of proper infrastructure, right? So how long do you stay usually before you were saying you will fly back home every 6 weeks or something?
Yeah, so as a general rule, it is that every 6 weeks that we spend in the country, we are entitled to rest and recuperation, or R&R, as we call it. So we can leave the country. It's not mandatory. You can stay longer, but we are entitled to like 7 calendar days extra in addition to the annual leave. I don't come home every time because as I am in Africa, I want to travel more in the continent itself.
Yep.
Because the flight tickets are very expensive from here. And I try to combine. So one of those R&Rs, I travel somewhere in Africa, and the next R&R, I come home. So yeah, that's the reason, because it is like a non-family jurisdiction. Nobody has their family there because of the situation. It's not stable there, so you cannot bring your family. But yeah, every 6 weeks that we spend in the country, we get like 1 week off, and then you can combine. You can add also annual leave days, and you can make it longer.
Ah, okay, sounds good.
Before COVID, I would actually go out of the country every 6 weeks, maybe a little more than that, 4 days or something, depending on the day. And yeah, I wanted to travel, and I did travel to a couple of countries in Africa. But then once COVID started last year, then it changed everything, because I had my Easter plan to go to Ethiopia for a week, and then that was the first plan that got ruined. And then I got stuck in Yambio for more than 4 months because I couldn't leave the country, as my airport in Pristina in Kosovo was closed, and also our airport in Juba in South Sudan was closed. So I had to stay there for 4 months. Yeah, four and a week.
Oh.
So, and it's not easy.
Yeah, what did you do there for 4 months then?
Basically working, and then trying to maintain mental health by just walking around the compound, because also due to COVID, we had to stop all the social gathering and everything. So it was, it was difficult. It was really stressful, because also like every meeting that I had to be like online meetings, obviously not meetings in person. We're about COVID. We're about how to protect ourselves, and how to prevent COVID. And if I remember correctly, on April 5th, it was the first COVID case confirmed in South Sudan. So that also created a bit more tension, because then we were even more limited to going to the market or going outside.
Yeah.
So yeah, it wasn't easy. It was very stressful.
How's the COVID situation in South Sudan? Because I probably assume that the medical infrastructure there is also not super strong. So how are they doing in terms of COVID cases?
Well, in terms of COVID cases, they haven't declared that many because also they are not testing that many.
Yeah.
So it's like, yeah, it's like mainly people who travel abroad are tested or people who like contact of positive cases. So, but they haven't had many cases, and that's a good thing that there aren't many deaths. If I'm correct, there are about 60 deaths or something. So it's not even in three digits, which is very good because, as you said, yes, the medical infrastructure is not good, and if it happens that the virus is spread even more, then it would be really difficult for a country that suffers other things also like poverty and instability, like both political instability and lots of divisions and everything. So it's fortunate that they don't have a high number. However, they also have the new South African variant of COVID already. It's there, so that is even riskier.
Yeah.
And in addition to that, there are other illnesses that South Sudan is fighting with, like Ebola is still threat, especially in that area where I live, because it's like close to the DRC border. So Ebola is a continuous threat. So it's not only COVID, because people, once COVID was there, all that they were thinking of and worrying about was COVID. But there are other things that South Sudanese and people who live there are still fighting with. Like there is malaria, there is typhoid, there is all kind of things. So it's fortunate that it's not a country where it's easy to also visit, because I think if there would be more tourists, it would be even worse. Because to be honest, some of the people who traveled brought the COVID in different countries, right? It's like, but although I'm not blaming travelers, obviously, because I'm a traveler myself, but poor country that doesn't get lots of tourists has somehow gone through COVID better, as far as I know, because it took until April to have the first confirmed case in South Sudan. So.
Oh, okay, okay. Yeah, that's not
last April because we're in April already.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. So before we dive deeper into the other countries, right, I need to bring it back to Kosovo first, because I do think Kosovo is obviously not well known by a lot of people. In fact, for me myself, I've been to Kosovo, but actually not really heard of Kosovo until I was in the Balkans myself, right? So I definitely like to hear from your point of view as a local, like give a introduction of Kosovo and what's the culture like.
Okay, so Kosovo in Southeast Europe is a small country of about 2 million citizens. It's about 11,000 square kilometers in territory, so it's not big. Whenever people want to compare it, they compare it sometimes with Delaware in the US. So it's kind of the same. The main language that we speak here is Albanian, because like 94% of the population is Albanian. And then the other official language that we have is Serbian, because we do have a 4% of Serbian population. And then we have different other communities here. We have Bosnian, we have Croatian, we have Turkish, we have Guarani and Roma. So we have lots of different cultures here. So let's see, we do have like I will go with three main cities, like big cities, starting from Pristina, which is the capital city, and then Prizren and Peja, which are also the main cities that people like travelers who come to Kosovo go and visit. So
Yeah.
I will call them the three Ps: Pristina, Peja, and Prizren. The main museums are in Pristina, the government buildings are in Pristina, and then there is lots of graffiti for those who want to visit there to see the different street art. But I think what attracts the most all the visitors that I've met or I've read through or seen their posts is this hospitality, this kind of like coffee culture and this kind of closeness that people feel here. Like we do have this tradition that the guest is the king or the queen. So whenever we have a guest in our house, we want to treat them as best as possible. And this has also been carried out in the streets. So if you as a foreigner are here and you are trying to find a place, whatever, like a museum or a coffee shop or your hotel, there will be people who actually will go above and beyond to help you as a foreigner. And yeah, it happens even like if they don't know or if they cannot communicate in English, which is also like rare, because most of the Kosovo people speak English, and maybe another language, mostly German, lately, they will try to help. If they cannot help you, then they will find someone else who can either speak the language or knows the place. So it's like this hospitality is something that makes every kind of visit to Kosovo special. And then after Pristina, people mainly go to Prizren, which is a very like multicultural and multinational city, because it has a mix of different nationalities. It has a very good castle at the top of the mountain from where you can have a beautiful view of the city. I think you have been there.
Yeah. I was there to see the sunset. I think it was
Yeah,
very
so
nice.
that's the best time to climb up and go to the castle to see the sunset, because it gives a very special view over Prizren. But also it's all these like small places and this nice food and these nice bridges. And it has also lots of culture. It has what we call the Prizren League house, which was a house where the Albanian leaders under the Ottoman Empire time gathered, and they decided to fight against Ottoman Empire to free the Albanian lands. So it has also lots of history in it. And then Peja is mostly visited for its nature. You can go to Rugova Canyon, and then you can do some hiking there, and then you can do some picnic, and you can do zip lining, and they keep adding more things, and then they keep making it more attractive. So these are like the three main cities, but there are other cities in Kosovo where you can go and visit, like castles or visit old churches. There is this village in Vitia in the southeast of Kosovo, where you can visit the church where Saint Mother Teresa, who is of Albanian origin, like both her parents were Albanian.
Yep.
She took the call for service in that small church in the village of Letnica, which is very rare, and also most of people don't know, or even like Kosovo, the citizens themselves do not visit. Myself, I visited it like 3 years ago, so it's like we do have all these small things here, and so sometimes we just tend to leave them for like the next weekend or next month, or so. You can find, we don't have a sea, so we don't have a beach, so that we cannot offer. However, we can go to the beach in Albania. 3 hours you are by the beach there.
Yeah.
And we are good for skiing. If people want to go skiing, then we do have some nice ski resorts where they can go. We do have Brezovica, and we do have Brod, and we do have Shari Mountain, so they can come and visit and do some skiing or hiking if they want to hike in the snow. I'm not a winter fan, so
Yeah, but it's definitely interesting because I think Kosovo is obviously very underrated. Not a lot of people know about it. Not a lot of tourists would
I
plan
think
it.
because there has been so much of propaganda out there. I've seen all these kind of posts on Facebook, travelers groups, where some people say like, oh, if you go to Kosovo, you can never go to Serbia, which is false. Obviously, you can come to Kosovo and you can go to Serbia. The only thing is that sometimes, like if you are not an EU citizen, if you don't have an EU biometric ID, then you cannot go directly to Serbia from Kosovo, because they will consider it as illegal entry, as Serbia does not recognize Kosovo yet. However, like you can go through Macedonia to Serbia, and you will not have any issue.
Yeah, I've heard that before of what you are saying, because when I was researching, I had that same concern that you just reflected, right? But my take was that I would go to Serbia first and then just finish up Serbia. So then I went to Macedonia after that, entered Kosovo through Skopje, right? And that kind of solves the issue. But I did hear about what you were saying, and I think that obviously might put some people off that's traveling in the other direction, right?
Yeah, this is out there, and whenever I see this, I have to start interacting with those people and tell them that this is false, and please do not spread misinformation, because it's not true, and it's not good for people to like put it out there, because you don't know how many people will be influenced by that. So it's not only the like one traveler who will just skip Kosovo. That traveler will come and will stay in some place, so we will spend money in that hotel, we will spend money in that local cafeteria, or in that, it's like every traveler that we miss, it's less money in Kosovo's tourism budget. And it's not just that big. This is one of the main things I have found out to be an obstacle to having more tourists. And then Another thing that stops people from coming here is that they still have that image of 1999 when Kosovo had the war. It's like, no, it sometimes is a little tricky because sometimes we tend to think that 1999 was just like a couple of years ago. It's been 22 years now.
Yep.
And in 22 years, there have been so many changes in Kosovo, and Kosovo is stable and it's safe. Of course, there are probably cases when things happen, which are very rare and happen everywhere. But I think this image of Kosovo in people's mind that the last time they heard of Kosovo was in 1999, and they still think that, oh, this is like unsafe, so let's just avoid it. Because I've seen people planning their Balkans trip and literally skipping Kosovo only. And I'm like, excuse me, why are you skipping Kosovo? So it's like most of the times I think that this is the main thing. Like 3 years ago, I was visiting Germany, and the question I had from a German old lady was like, "Oh, so you like here?" I was like, "Yeah, I'm visiting. I like it here." She's like, "It's safer, right?" I was like, "What do you mean?"
Oh gosh.
It's like Kosovo is, but is it safe now there? I was like, "Yeah, the war happened like 19 years ago, so it is safe." You see, it's like it's still that thing that people still think that Kosovo is unsafe. So,
Yeah.
and also and there is this other thing like, oh, this is like a very small country, so there isn't much to visit, and then people just like pass by or come to Skopje and then do a day trip to Pristina or a day trip to Prizren, and they just leave. So, but Kosovo is more than that. So it actually it requires more time if you want to like really visit and not just tick it off from your list. Then it requires more time. You can easily spend a week here and still you will just have seen the main things.
Yes, I do agree with that. I'm definitely guilty of not spending enough time in Kosovo, and I realized that after the fact that I actually should have like allocated more time for Kosovo. So that stigma, or like I think that misconception is definitely there. And I do feel you in terms of the sense whereby sometimes people have a misconception on how your country is, and it's surprising because even Singapore, now that we are so developed and one of the fastest growing economy, and in some places people are still thinking like Singapore is a jungle, which is like almost like, I don't know, like 50, 60 years
Or you
ago.
need one day only for Singapore. Like, yep, one day in Singapore is enough.
Yeah, they are always very shocked when they Google it. After that, they'll be like, they Google Singapore and then out springs all these high-rise buildings and stuff, and they're like, well, this is not the impression I had of the country. Yeah, it's funny in that sense. But so tourists are not as common in Kosovo, right? Because I know when I visited, I basically didn't even meet another traveler or another foreign traveler. And even when I stayed in Prizren, the hostel I was in, there was no one in it. I went to check in and there was like, yeah, there's no one. You are the only guest here. I was like, huh? Then how do you run the business then? And I guess it's also because of being Asian. It's a bit, I guess, rare in Kosovo. So when I was up at the castle, the fortress in Prizren, and I stayed there for quite a while because I wanted to catch both the day scene and then the sunset and then the night scene, right? But a lot of locals went up to also catch the sunset, and then kids were looking at me in a very weird way. They are like, this is rare. Like I've not seen this kind of people before. And then they started to try and snap photos of me, but they tried to do it secretly, obviously. But they were obviously intrigued by like a foreign traveler or maybe a foreign Asian. So is that the case whereby there's not as much travelers in these cities at the moment, or like in the last few years?
To be honest, it has increased like compared to the previous years. So like I don't want to turn it into like what about situation of yours, like when did you travel to Prizren and like
Yeah.
what was the situation, like what month, but obviously there is a time period like a season when there are more travelers. Like during winter season we don't have many travelers because it's cold, so and nobody wants to come at cold time and just get stuck in their hotel or in their hostel. But they are increasing, like the number is increasing. Not many Asian tourists, unfortunately. It's mostly, I think, mostly Americans and mostly Western Europeans. Not many Asians. Although like just before COVID, I have seen like a little bit more of like Japanese or more Chinese tourists, like in group
Okay.
tours, but not independent travelers. But yeah, it's mainly Western, and probably, yeah, seeing Asian tourists alone in a non-touristy season probably attracted the attention of the kids. I apologize for that behavior because I
No,
know
no, it's good.
it's not good. I do face it at times, not that much when I travel. Like mainly now that I travel in African countries, I do see it that at times kids will look at me and like wave at me. I never take it negatively. Like I'm different, so being different attracts the attention. So that's it.
Yeah,
So,
yeah.
but in terms of having tourism, yes, because of the previous reasons I mentioned, there aren't as many tourists as I would love to have, but the numbers are increasing. However, there are like certain time periods when you see more tourists. During summer period, you do see more because the weather is nice, and then they come and pass through Kosovo and in their way to Albania or Macedonia. In Pristina, you cannot really know who the
Yeah.
tourists are unless they are backpackers, and then you see them moving with a big backpack because it's pretty much international
Yes.
city, having all the embassies here and also other international organizations. In prison, usually we do have more people being there during summer, not just foreign tourists, but also Kosovo citizens because it's a nice city. So everybody
Mhm.
wants to go there and spend the day. And also in July, usually July, August, there is this film festival, DocuFest, which attracts lots of visitors, both Albanians and also foreigners. And then most of the people who come to Kosovo come for the mountains in Peja. So if you go
Mhm.
there, then you can see more of them. But it's not enough. Definitely, it's not enough. And for the reasons I said, so because everything is affordable. Kosovo is not expensive country.
Mhm. Yeah.
So you can come. I mean, you have been here, so you know it's not that expensive. You can sleep in a hostel for like 10 euros a night in the city center of Pristina. You can pay
Yes.
10 euros and then just stay across the most expensive hotel, which is Swiss Diamond, and then you can just like go out of your hostel, and then you are in the city center. So and
Yeah.
then food is not expensive, beer is not expensive because I've learned to compare the prices by the price of the beer. So it's like it's pretty much affordable, and it's good for everybody. So even like backpackers can do it, budget travelers can visit, luxury travelers can also visit. So it offers everything. So you have a variety of prices, and then you can find something for all kind of travelers. And there are like places for solo travelers, there are places for groups, and there are places for family travelers. So we offer everything. I don't know what
It's always the perception. I think it's a growing process, right? Like as more people visit it, and then you have more word of mouth spreading, and then it will get better. Because even I look at it and I'm like, I definitely did not visit the nature, and now that I'm hearing you say, I know that I have to plan a trip back again sometimes, maybe in July for the film festival, because that sounds super interesting after COVID, obviously. But then, yeah, I realized I've missed out quite a bit in the country for sure. So I'll
Yeah,
definitely
but
look.
I mean, in any country, it's impossible not to miss out on things. Like I spent 3 weeks in Kenya, and then the moment I was still at the airport, I was leaving Kenya, and I started like just scrolling down the Instagram, and I was like, oh, I missed this. How did I miss this place? And I had done my research, and I knew there is so much to see in Kenya or in other countries. I'm like, oh, I missed this. Why? So
Very,
it's something, but to change that perception that has been created through lots of propaganda for a long time takes quite long, because usually whatever bad news is there, it spreads so fast, and then good news, people tend not to like really care about good news or good reviews anymore. If you have like a negative post out there, it will spread out. But if you are saying good words about any place, then it will be like it will have limited news. But if we can influence a couple of people, then it's still good, because it's like COVID. You tell a few
yeah.
people that Kosovo is good, those few people come visit, and they tell a few other people. So
It's always
that's
that like that, right? Like the bad news always goes like fast because the news just like to cover bad news that's more attractive to human attention for some reason. But that's
yeah.
also one of the reasons why we always say you have to really travel to a place to know the place, because if you just hear it from the media, then you are only hearing
Yeah,
like
no.
one-sided story of it. Yeah,
And the media do not represent the real feeling and what the real
for sure.
population goes through.
For sure. So let's talk about whether the citizens of Kosovo travel out a lot, because I understand you were saying the passport is not as strong. And obviously, me having not met many Kosovo travelers, I would assume that it's not a very common thing for people from Kosovo to be able to just go anywhere in the world.
Yeah, not very common. And I'm not talking only about like African countries, wherever I'm traveling now. Like in every country I've been, there has been at least one immigration officer who has told me that, oh, you're the first Kosovo person I'm seeing. So that is like a special thing. But there are many factors which impact our limited travelers. First, because Kosovo is not fully recognized yet. So there are countries that do not accept our passports, so we cannot travel to. Then we need a visa for almost everywhere. So that is also another issue.
Yeah, that's always troublesome.
And yeah. And then there is the money issue, because being unable to travel in a huge number, like most of people cannot travel, it makes everything more expensive, the flight tickets, and then we don't have like these, some of the more affordable companies are not in Kosovo. We don't have Ryanair. They don't fly out of Kosovo, so you cannot fly out with them. Like we do have Turkish Airlines, which is pretty much expensive.
Yeah.
So that is also something that makes the troubles. But I think the main thing is definitely the visas, the lack of freedom of movement. And in this case, I'm talking more about the EU countries, European Union countries, like Schengen area.
Yep.
Although we are in Europe geographically, but we're not part of the EU, and we don't even have visa liberalization. So to get a Schengen visa, it's a travel on itself. Because you have to run after all those kind of papers that you have to submit to the embassy. Well, let's start counting. You need a birth certificate. Like this is not applicable for all embassies, but generally. Then you need a family certificate. Then you need a work contract, something that tells them that you have a job and you're coming back. Then you need your bank statement for like 3 last months or 6 last months. Then you need health insurance. I mean, some of these are things that you generally need anyway, but like a health insurance. Then you need a flight ticket. Then you need a like accommodation. And in some of the embassies, they want it to be non-refundable. So yeah, and then of course you need like the passport photos for the visa, and then in addition they have like at least a 3 pages application form that you have to fill out, and all of this you have to collect, and you have to pay also, obviously.
Yes.
And you have to wait sometimes for like 3 months to get your visa appointment. My last experience applying for a Schengen visa was literally a 3 months wait time. I scheduled my appointment in November. My appointment was in February.
Wow.
And so it's like I had to collect all these papers and then go to the embassy, and then they somehow treat you like badly. It's like they start making you feel guilty for wanting to travel to their country. It's like it's literally like you are under investigation and they want to ask all those kind of questions. Like, and then my last Schengen visa was issued the day before I was scheduled to travel.
Oh my God.
So it's like I go there and I get my visa, and then I only start packing because I didn't know if I'm flying or not, like if I'm going there or not, because I didn't have my visa yet. And then my visa was valid only for 3 months, which was a good thing because there are embassies who also issue visas for as less as 3 days.
What?
So
like that's crazy.
Yes. Literally, you have to prepare all these papers to wait for this 3 months time. And then your visa is valid for the duration that you are going to visit that country, not longer than that. You have booked your accommodation for from 2nd to 5th. Your visa is from 2nd to 5th.
Oh gosh. So that means does it mean that every time you travel, you try to travel a longer period? Because obviously it's not very efficient to go through a 3-month process for a 3-day trip, right? So do you usually plan to do?
Yeah, it's not suspicions, of course, and it's like it's ridiculous because in my personal case, I had a 3 years valid visa of US. So it was like, and this EU country gives me a 3 months visa. I'm like, I'm not going to stay in your country. If I wanted to stay somewhere, I would have stayed in the US. I wouldn't stay in your country. So it's just, yeah. And after that, then I moved to South Sudan. So I didn't apply for another Schengen visa, but I really got fed up. I got tired because it's tiresome. It's like,
Yes.
especially when I go out. I remember my experience when I went to Thailand, for which also I had to apply for a visa, but I got it like within the same day. So it was
Okay.
like a trip to Tirana, Albania, applying for the visa and getting it, which was easier. But then I go there and literally I see these Western European looking young people who are backpacking, which I am so against because like you are going to that country and then you are literally taking money from those poor people to travel. It's like travel is it's a bit of a privilege and you have money, you travel. You don't backpack. Or maybe it's just my perspective, but I was so pissed off. I was like, I am here. I'm from Kosovo. I'm a European also. But I have to, like, whenever I want to visit their countries, I have to go through such a long process. And I do have money. I would never be backpacking.
When you say backpacking, I don't think you actually just meant backpacking. I think you are
No,
saying the
no,
people who,
backpack. Like you have a bag,
uh-huh,
like you have a backpack, but you're also begging for money and
ah,
then traveling. Not backpacking.
like
Backpacking is fine.
backpacking, like trying to sell stuff or trying to ask for money on the street with this
Yes,
board
like,
saying like, please fund my travels or something, right?
it's on my travels.
Yeah, that I get. Yeah, that
I'm
has
a
been a
full
problem.
European. So yeah, there is this thing that kind of irritates us, and not
Yes.
just me personally, but it irritates my friends also because it's tiresome. Like you cannot be spontaneous. You cannot just say like, "Oh, I have my next weekend free. Let's take a plane. Let's buy this ticket and then go here." We can go only to few countries. Like we can visit our neighbors without a visa and without a passport, and then we can go to Turkey without a visa, and there are like a couple of other countries where you can get a visa on arrival or an e-visa, but which are either too far away and they cost lots of money, like going to Haiti, or then you have to apply for a visa. And in a couple of cases, we don't even have their embassies here, so you have to go to another country to apply for that visa. And
Mhm.
in a couple of cases, those countries are EU countries, so you have to apply first for a Schengen
Schengen.
visa to go and then apply for the other visa. So it limits us a lot. It's annoying. Traveling should be passport free. You should just be able to go wherever you want. You can afford it. Just travel.
I can't say I understand the pain just because I come from a country with a strong passport, but I always say that I admire the perseverance that you guys have in applying for visas because I hate dealing with immigrations, even when sometimes I'm just looking for extension or in a place where I have to apply for a visa. I will always already find a hassle. And I can imagine if I have to go through this like almost every time
Yeah.
in every single country I go, yeah, that's definitely a bit demoralizing.
It
Yeah.
is, it is. But then you kind of tend to forget about those kind of bad experiences in the immigration. Like the first time when I went to Zanzibar, and then on my way back, I had at least 2 hours at the airport because I was transiting through Kenya. And Kenya Airways official was telling me that you need a transit visa. I was
Oh.
not even leaving the airport. I was literally there for less than 2 hours. And they kept me for 2 hours going back and forth between the check-in counter and the Kenya Airways office. I was showing them the official website of Kenyan government saying that no nationality needs a transit visa for up to 72 hours if they are staying at the airport. And they just were, oh no, our system says you need a visa. I'm like, I don't need a
Oh.
visa. So it took me for like at least 2 hours there to just for them to figure out that, okay, this poor Kosovo travel doesn't need a transit visa. Let her go. I was like, I came through Kenya because I flew through Kenya on my way in. I was like, I flew through Kenya. If I needed a visa, I would have to have a visa at that time. So I don't need a visa. Or the other thing, going back from Bangkok to Belgrade, they were like, "Oh, you need a visa for Serbia." I was like, "I don't even need my passport there. I enter Serbia with my ID." So, or the latest time I had this issue entering Zimbabwe. I had the e-visa issued by their system, and I still couldn't enter Zimbabwe because they don't recognize Kosovo. And somehow Kosovo was in their e-visa system, and it's still there. And I had a visa, and they still didn't let me in. So I was between Zambia and Zimbabwe border for like 6 hours, and then at the end I had to pay for another visa and enter Zambia again. It was
Oh
like,
God.
you start, like, after a while, just kind of forget about this. But every time I go through an immigration that has not seen many Kosovo citizens, it is at least a 5 or 10 minutes wait for them to go through my passport and check it and see, like, what is this?
Yeah, I definitely feel you on that because I had the same experience despite having a strong passport, right? Because well, the thing is Singaporeans have a strong passport, but not a lot of Singaporeans like to travel very far off. They always stick to the same few Asian countries, or Europe, right? So when I did, for example, I think two of the places, one was in Patagonia between Argentina and Chile. I always have to cross because you're trying to see both sides of Patagonia.
uh,
Usually they take a long time because they look at my passport, then they have no idea where this is from, right? So they have to go through a paper list and to see like, okay, where the hell is Singapore and how many days does this guy need a visa or does he not need a visa? So I always took like a long time at the immigration. And the other time was in Moldova. So I was flying from Moldova to Russia, and that was quite epic because the immigration official has never seen this passport before. And then she was so amazed by it. She started calling all her colleagues over into her booth. And then they were like looking at this passport like, this is some new thing that they have never seen before. And then they were trying to figure out, can I actually fly to Russia? And because it was also a bit weird in the sense that I was supposed to have a visa for Russia, but because I was going for the World Cup, and so if you have a World Cup ID and a ticket, you don't need a visa then because that substitutes the visa, right? So they had to figure out all these things right on the spot for a nationality that they have like almost never seen before.
you have experienced a little bit of
Yeah, a
it.
little bit. I'm sure I haven't had it as bad as Kosovo
Um,
passport because I do understand how difficult it is. Yeah. So what actually got you into the interest of traveling then? Because I reckon it's not a common culture where you see from young that your friends are going abroad and you also just follow, right? It's more of you don't actually see this trend, but what got you started to, want to go abroad and check out the world?
I think there are probably a couple of factors. I loved to read. I still love reading. So, and reading kind of brings you to different cultures and different places. And I had my first trip when I was 6 years old to Belgrade, Serbia. I still consider it as out of the country, although at that time we were occupied by Serbia, but that was my first trip outside of Kosovo.
Yeah.
So I don't remember much like of the things, but I do remember a few things from the trip and how I felt good for seeing something different. But then fast forward, I had my first trip by plane to Nice, France. And there also I went to this high school festival of like, and there were people from all kind of cultures, from all kind of countries and continents, and it was a good thing to be there and to see that we are kind of the same. Like we would hang out and dance and eat and talk, and I started working, and my work entailed also some traveling outside, and it's this kind of, you get hooked to that. It's like the more you travel, the more you start understanding that, oh, okay, because when you travel to some country, then you meet people who have traveled to another country, and then they start talking to you about that. And then I spent 2 years doing my master's in Chicago, and then I traveled a lot more when I was there. Then I just couldn't stop traveling. It's like my mind was always like, okay, like what is the next country? Like even before coming back, I have to think like, oh, okay, so what is my next country? And then being from Kosovo, of course, it means I have to figure out so many other things. First, can I travel there? And then the other things of visas. So, but yeah, like I think this is like what triggered my traveling even more, like that freedom of traveling I had when I was in the US, because first I could travel within US, and then I also traveled to Mexico on a US visa, obviously, because otherwise Kosovo citizens cannot travel to Mexico because you cannot apply for a visa, for a Mexican visa. And then like Haiti, Dominican Republic, and Puerto Rico. It was like the more I traveled, the more I wanted to travel. It's like I always think that, oh, okay, there is this place there that I have to see. And I'm more intrigued by places that lots of people do not think of going to. Like I went to Djibouti, which is not on the radar of people.
Yeah.
Exactly. It's like, oh, okay, this Djibouti sounds interesting. So let's see what is there. So, and now it's just like the more you travel, the more you get into that world of travelers and traveling. It's like the more you see, and it's like, you, I don't know, for some people it's getting new shoes or getting technology like new phones and all. For me, it's just visiting more countries. And maybe because it's kind of a forbidden fruit for Kosovo citizens, with all the restrictions and all the obstacles, it makes it even more challenging. Like it's a challenge accepted. I want to travel there. So let's see. It's always good to go and visit something new and to experience something new and different.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that because I obviously have bitten by the same wanderlust bug whereby, when you see one, you just started wanting to see more. I think it's a lot of also the ability to see different cultures and different perspectives from people. And that's very attractive because you are starting to see in a lot more zoom out lens than when you are back home, whereby most people share the same values and the same culture and the same society norms. But once you get out of that and you look at the world as a whole, it suddenly becomes way more diverse and just interesting to look at, right?
Yeah,
And
true. But then when you go back to your country, you're kind of the outcast because your view has changed, but not that of your people. So it's like,
that's true. That can happen sometimes. So in on that point, right, I'm curious to know on how traveling has actually changed your perspective because, and I think this is in correlation to another post that you posted about on your Instagram that I saw that I thought it was very interesting. You're speaking about the white privilege and being in Africa, you actually experience the white privilege, which you have never felt yourself because you have never really seen yourself from Kosovo as so-called a white person, right? And you
yeah.
spend actually 2 years in the States and you are from Kosovo and you spend like a lot of time now in South Sudan, which are, I would say like maybe three different countries that have, well, let's say a different vibe and different society treatment. Let's just call it that way in a very broad sense. So how have all these like kind of changed the way you see the world?
I think traveling changes you, but also you have to be an open-minded person to travel. It's like the chicken and the egg story. I don't know which one is first. Like, do you have to be open-minded and then travel, or do you become open-minded while traveling? I think it has made me understand even more that we are kind of the same. It's like we are all people. We are all like facing the same issues in the big picture. We all face the same issues like insecurity about our future. And lately it has become very superficial. It's not about like close connection anymore. Like the majority of people don't really bother about like really getting to know someone. Is more like just pretending. It's all about like the Instagram and all about like that perfect shot. To be honest, I don't care a lot. That if you have gone through my feed, it's mostly not me. Like there are me pictures also, obviously, because I'm a human being after all. But it's mostly about the nature and all. So it does change because, especially if you spend some time to go deeper into conversation with people. And yes, living in three different continents, of course, it has given me another perspective because coming from Kosovo and having gone through a terrible time, having gone through war and then the post-war period, and like having grown up with the development of the country as independent, of course it gives you a different perspective. And also Kosovo is it's still developing. There are lots of obstacles, lots of things that I have had to go through as a child or as a teenager or as an adult. But I see it as having made me stronger to face any kind of difficulties. But then going from Kosovo to the US, where everything is so different, and especially having gone from Pristina, which is still a small capital, to Chicago, which is like twice big as like Kosovo, it's a total different experience because you have to start adjusting, and then you have to start to get to know how things function and how like what part of the society you are in. And when you go there and you know that you are like there for a short time, you kind of focus on what you are there for, and then you just achieve that, and then you come back. Like in my case, it was to do my master's, and then I started traveling as much as possible. So those were my two priorities, like finish my master's and travel to as many US states as possible. So, but of course, it also gave me the chance to make friends. So I made lots of friends from different nationalities, like friends from China or India or Bangladesh or Americans or Mexico. So it's like it. And then, of course, once you start getting to know people in a personal level, you also start to understand more, because we are all prejudiced because we don't know. It's like, I think that the main problem why there is prejudice is not knowing the others, not knowing how a Singaporean person lives or thinks, or what are your priorities, or what are your main challenges. And not just while living in a country, but also while traveling there. If you really take the time to go and see, then you can actually get to know things. I was discussing one day in Yambio before I left with a Nigerian co-worker, and she was telling me that, oh, when you come to Nigeria, you can visit this place. And I was like, what is there? She's like, oh, that's the place where all white people, Europeans live. I was like, I'm sick of white people. I don't want to go and visit a neighborhood with white people. I want to go and visit how locals live, not expats. I don't want that. I think when you go there and you try to kind of merge into the locals' experience, then of course you will start to understand more. Like when I visited Kenya, I mostly traveled through public transport because I wanted to see how people also travel and all, which was very tiresome, to be honest, and very annoying at some time, because I am a Muzungu, a white person, and at times it made that difference on how I was treated, and not always good, unfortunately, in Kenya. But it gives you the experience, and it gives you the knowledge, and also it shows you how those people in that country think of foreigners. And now living in South Sudan is a total different experience, because first of all, I live in a UN compound. I don't live outside with the community, but I do interact with them every time, because I do have co-workers, like national staff co-workers. So it still gives you the chance to understand where are we as people, what do we value and what do we appreciate. And yeah, it's been a great thing having seen all these experiences. So now I'm only hoping to be able to live next in somewhere in Asia or somewhere in Latin America. And
I think what you were saying makes a lot of sense. It's a lot about, I guess, a lot about empathy. Once you start traveling to other countries and really trying to mix in with the locals and understand the culture, or even just interacting more with people from different countries, right? Be it expats coming to your own country or travelers coming to your own country, I think it helps humans to get a better idea of the other person and their culture, and just realize that how the basic human needs are still the same, right? Despite where you're coming from. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's a two ways the exchange of knowledge and experience. Being from Kosovo, I have to always like give a short introduction to what Kosovo is and where it is, and all that, like a brief history, which is good. I love it when people are honest, because I do meet lots of travelers when I'm traveling, and some of them are also just these kind of pretentious people that think that they know everything, which is mostly the case with one certain nationality, but I'm not going to mention it. Whenever I am asked like, oh, so where are you from? I'm like, I'm from Kosovo. Ah, okay. And at times I do have the tendency of asking people, so do you know where Kosovo is? And then that person said, oh, okay. And they're like, no, we don't. I'm like, why don't you ask? I mean, if I ask you where you're from and then you say whatever, some place that I've never heard of, I'll ask you, oh, where is that?
Yeah,
So
that
it's
makes
like,
a lot of sense. Yeah, I can see you have your country history nailed down, because when I ask you about it, you literally can tell me a lot more. Let's just say you can tell me a lot more about Kosovo than I can tell you about Singapore. That's for sure.
I'm getting better at that. I'm getting better. Well,
Okay,
yeah, but it makes sense because Kosovo is a new country. So we are kind of the pioneers of transmitting whatever knowledge we have of our country to other people.
for sure, for sure. So to close off, I think one question that's very interesting to hear from you would be that if other people from Kosovo also wants to travel the world and see the world like you have been able to, what are some advice and tips that you are able to give?
First, travel. So don't stop because our passport is weak and we have lots of limitations, because there are still many countries that do accept us. Second, traveling doesn't have to be expensive. You can still travel on budget because there are so many options to travel with less money, let's say like that. There are like couch surfing, and there are so many Facebook groups, especially for women, where other women offer accommodation for you. You don't have to go and spend the most of the money, eat like locals do, and travel with like public transportation. So those are the two main ways that you can also save money. So you can travel on budget. And Kosovo citizens cannot travel to EU countries. They can travel to Asian countries or African countries. They are open and they do accept us. So if EU doesn't want us, let's not give them the chance to look at us and pity us and treat us as criminals. Like, just travel where you can. There are so many beautiful countries out there.
For sure, for sure. Thanks so much for the tips.
Thank
It
you.
makes sense. I mean, just do what you can with whatever the boundaries are, right? You say the world is big. There's definitely a lot of.
I think we shouldn't get stuck and wait for EU to accept us. While there are 196 countries in the world, EU is not all of it. So
That's true. Cool. Thanks for coming on today, Lavdi. I think what you have shared is really valuable.
Thank you. Thank you. It was my pleasure.
Thank you for listening to Chat with Nomads. Please remember to subscribe and leave a review wherever you listen to your podcasts. And be sure to share with your friends. Also, we'd love to know what topics you'd like to hear more about. To stay updated on the latest, join us on our mailing list at chatwithnomads.com. You can also find more travel and nomading tips at Nomads Unveiled. That's NOMADSUNVEILED.com. Start living your dreams today. We'll catch you in the next episode.